Hey guys, what's going on? I'm hoping that this is broadcasting. This is our first time doing this, so if there are bugs or issues or technical problems, then I apologize in advance. This is our first time doing it, so we'll work out the bugs as we go on. And my overall goal is to make this an actual weekly show, and we want to raise the quality level as we go on. So for those of you who are joining us or soon to join us, hello and welcome to the show. All right, so the first topic of discussion today, I decided it would be on the importance of consent. Okay, and it's funny because on the message board itself, there was something that came across, and it said it was a question that I received, and it said consent about what, and I was a little taken aback by that because I didn't understand that question. I thought in this culture that we live in today, especially with what's going on in the media and the presidential race, I mean, consent, as soon as I hear the word, I kind of get the gist of what it is. It's about, consent between two adults with respect to sexuality. So I figured we'd talk about that now because the iron is hot, okay? And when the iron is hot, that's when you strike. So I couldn't think of a better subject. And I'm here with Jill. And Jill's going to help me out as a co-host. She's also helping deal with setting everything up and my madness. Before the show, I actually dropped my contact lens because I was rushing to get this all together. This was literally to the wire, guys. I mean, right to the wire. Just as we said, go. We were just doing the final touches. I was just finishing up my notes. That's what happens when you have a job and kids and a life and so. But anyway, thanks for being here, Jill. I appreciate your help.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So, consent. Like, what do you think when you hear that word? Like, what's your initial reaction to that? How do you feel?
Well, I just want to say that before you said it's between two adults,
right,
in a sexual manner, but it's between two individuals or anything involving more than one individual
right,
when you
absolutely.
want to do something. So
Sure.
It's not just about a sexual encounter where you have to agree to be a part of it.
Right.
But
right.
anything,
and even young adult. I mean, let's be real.
Right.
Consenting young adults as well. So yeah, absolutely. Two individuals.
Period. Two or more individuals who are agreeing to be a part of something, no matter what it is.
Right. But now, when we're getting into the sexual aspect, disclaimer: adults. These people have to be old enough to make these sorts of decisions. I'm not saying that consent to 15-year-olds. As far as I'm concerned, they're still right. What are you thinking regarding that? I mean, like we're talking about two teenagers, and they can do whatever they want sexually as long as there's consent. I don't know about that. I'm not comfortable with that.
No, but we have to recognize that they are going to be
right.
Sexually active, and yes, anybody who is going to partake, if we're referencing sex, then yes, it has to be consensual on all parties involved.
Okay.
So regardless if they're 12, and even if you don't want to think about that, that's the truth. 12-year-olds do have sex. 15, 20, it doesn't matter, as long as all parties involved are in agreement of it. And the moment that somebody says stop or no is when it ends, no matter what. No matter what.
No, I understand that. But listen, I have a daughter, another one on the way, thanks to you. Okay? And when I hear you say 12-year-olds giving consent, that creeps me out.
Oh, absolutely. I have a son, and it creeps me out.
It creeps me out.
You don't want to think about that, but
no.
That's the truth, is that it is happening.
Right.
And obviously education is key to anything.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here. That's the point of this discussion, because we're here to sort of push the envelope. These are the things that people don't really feel comfortable talking about. And I think therein lies the problem. So when I say I feel creeped out about it, that will inhibit me from talking about it, right? That's part of the problem, I suppose, because if I'm uncomfortable talking about it, I'm not going to communicate that to my 12-year-old, my 13-year-old, and that's when the problems occur, because they don't understand the nature of consent. And it's extremely important. I mean, this is something that we have to be willing to at least face, and as uncomfortable as it is. So, and again, that's why we're here, and that's the point of this show. The truth of the matter is, I mean, right now there is something emerging, right? Do you feel that kind of, that there's like this new consciousness emerging from the old paradigm? it kind of feels like people are more willing to discuss these things because look, when I was a kid, everything I learned about my own body and sexuality came about from, mistakes.
Experience and
right?
Mistakes. And now that the conversation is being had, and that's part of it, is having conversation, having open dialogue about it.
Right.
Especially in recent news broadcasts about things regarding consent and
right.
rape culture in our society.
Right. That's what it comes down to, right? It is about rape culture. When you've got a presidential nominee bragging about grabbing a woman by her genitals, you know what I mean? But see, that's one thing, and I that is not locker room talk. Let's make that very clear. That's not locker room talk. I've been in many locker rooms. I've never heard anyone talk in that manner. Boys do have their banter. They talk about, oh, I did this, I did that. Most of the time it's bullshit, right? Most of the time it's just guys bragging about something that.
But they're not bragging that they're forcing themselves on women based on the power they hold.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about. That it never goes to that level where it's like, wait a second, you did what? Like that's beyond reason, okay? But here's the main problem here. It's not so much what he said, which is a problem. It's how the people who support him responded or reacted. They defended him
and made it. They justified
right.
it.
Yeah,
and really, it's a gateway into the culture that we're talking about. What he was saying is a gateway
right
into the culture, and we saw that earlier this year with Brock Turner, who was sentenced to 6 months and only served like 3 months.
Right, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of factors that come into play there. The fact that he's white is an absolute, factor with respect to his sentencing. I believe that 100%. Because not long after that there was, if I'm not mistaken, a Latino, a Hispanic man, who was accused of a similar crime, and he was put away. And he was hit hard. I don't know the specifics, but I know it was a much harsher penalty. That's a different story. That's a whole.
Right.
That's a different segment. But it was the way it was. I mean, yeah, there was public outcry and there was outrage. There were people that were like, hey, this is insane. I can't believe he's saying this. And then you had almost half the country, basically like. Yeah, he's just locker room talk. It's no big deal, And then you have women. This is the part that really blows my mind. Is you have Kellyanne Conway, his campaign manager, coming up there saying, "Oh, that's not what he's saying." So, we're a pretty smile and just absolute nonsense. Making up excuses. I mean, as a woman, as anybody, as a person, okay, that's offensive, dude. When I heard that, it wasn't a matter of me being offended as a man. It offended my sensibilities as a human being.
Right.
Okay, it was like this is not. And again, maybe it's because I have a daughter and I'm going to have another, and I think about these things, and yeah, it's like this is sickening. If anyone said that about my daughter, and I overheard it, I mean that's you're talking about.
It's scary. It's scary.
Yeah, I mean
it's scary because you're saying from the perspective of being a father to a daughter, but I have a son who's growing up with this kind of culture, and really it's our job as parents to educate our kids.
Absolutely. That's without a doubt. And that's where it all lies in education and communication.
And having a conversation about it, communicating and conversing about it and asking your children questions, not only having them ask you questions, but asking your kids questions.
Right. Okay. So here's what we have to deal with. Okay, and I'm gonna show you guys a clip. This is really what we're up against with respect to this topic. Okay. Now, I want to get beyond partisan lines. I don't want to get into this left and right nonsense anymore. Let me apologize right now with respect to Frank Talk. I got so caught up in this political fervor, the political theater, because that's really what it is. It's political theater. And I got so caught up in this, just like probably anyone else that was engaged in this country, engaged in the process or even watching marginally, you couldn't help but feel emotional about what's going on with respect to the presidential race. I got caught up with it. I caught up with the whole thing. Posted incessantly about Donald Trump and trying to expose, what I thought was fraud, essentially. But you know what? That's really not. I want to end that. Okay, I'm not going to take any of those posts down. They're all up for posterity. I own that. That's how I felt, and that's where it's going to stay. But that's not where the show is going to go. All right. The purpose of this show is to try to see things from all angles, from a top-down perspective. Now I'm going to show you a clip. You're going to probably feel something. Okay. But before we pass judgment, I want us to really discuss what it is we're seeing. Okay, and how we can get beyond this mindset. I'm letting you know this is some crazy shit. So, pay attention. This was Rush Limbaugh on his show. Now, Rush, he says some crazy stuff, right? I mean, he's known for his hyperbole, his theater. You know, he's been around for a long time. You expect him to say things that are a bit on the crazy side. This knocked me off my chair.
You know what the magic word, the only thing that matters in American sexual mores today is one thing. You can do anything. The left will promote and understand and tolerate anything as long as there is one element. Do you know what it is? Consent. If there is consent on both or all three or all four, however many are involved in the sex act, it's perfectly fine, whatever it is. But if the left ever senses and smells that there's no consent in part of the equation, then here come the rape police. But consent is the magic key to the...
All right. So consent is the magic key. I hope you guys were able to hear that. I didn't have the volume up as loud as I would have liked, but essentially what he's saying is that the left, which he's referring to anyone who thinks, you know, differently than he does, is essentially okay with anything that happens, right? Anything. So you could have 4 adults, and these 4 adults come to the conclusion that they want to get involved in some sort of, you know, sexual jaunt, right? They want to have a 4-way. Okay, so I told you we're gonna delve into some uncomfortable stuff here, and that's fine. All right, we need to talk about this stuff. If these 4 people decide to do that, as long as there's consent, it's okay. It's okay as long as there's consent. Okay? No shit. That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Rush. As long as there is consent, these 4 adults can do whatever the hell they want without judgment. You know, this guy is putting himself out there as like the moral center of the universe, right? Now, when I heard that, it really did. It didn't. I can't say it shocked me, but it woke me up to the disparity, right, between those who understand the nature of consent and those who do not. So when you hear that, well, I mean, what was going on in your head when you heard that? I mean, that's, as a woman, when you hear that.
Well, it's horrifying because this is a white male who has his own program, and he's reaching out to people and saying, basically saying, I have to ask permission. Well, yeah, because if I wanted to go into your house, I would have to ask permission to go into your house. I mean, we can oversimplify it.
Right.
And that's how it is. So, yeah, it's absolutely horrifying that this man is perpetuating that kind of rhetoric.
Well, all right, so there's that clip about the tea. Right? Remember that tea clip where it's like if someone comes over your house, this is a very simple way of explaining it, guys. You know, if you want to have a discussion with someone and make it a little bit easier, especially if it's someone younger, there's a clip online, and I'll post the link. It uses the metaphor of tea. So somebody comes over your house, you make them a cup of tea, and they don't want the tea. So you accept that and you move on.
Or they do say they want the cup of tea, you make them a cup of tea, and then they decide they don't want it. Well, guess what? You accept that too.
You accept that too. You know, you don't shove the tea down their throat. You don't throw it in their face. You don't hold them down and force it on them. You know, and that's really that simple. You know what I mean? But again, when I hear this guy talk, it really does. it makes me angry because my initial response, my initial reaction, my gut reaction is to attack, right? But what would that do, right? In the grand scheme of things, me attacking him and calling him names and going off on him as a human being will really achieve very little. I mean, we have to remember that this person, there's damage somewhere, right?
Right.
There's got to be somewhere along his journey, there's got to be a point along that journey where something went wrong, okay? Because when you have contempt, and make no mistake, that was contempt that we were hearing. It was a certain contempt that he had for people who are consenting, consenting individuals. Then he said something about the rape police, right? Well, I think he meant the police. There's no rape police. You call the police if you get raped or if you're assaulted.
Right.
And he mocked even that. So there's absolute evidence that there is some sort of damage that took place along the line of this man's life. So how do we get beyond that paradigm? How do we push forth that shift? And I was talking to somebody yesterday, a couple of days ago as a matter of fact, and she brought up something that I wouldn't have thought of. And she said to me that the only way you can truly have consent is if it is precipitated by compassion. Right? There has to be a level of compassion in order for you to even recognize that there needs to be consent.
Right, yeah.
I mean, bottom line. And compassion is something that you must instill at a very early age through the formative years of a person's life, of a human being's life. It's very hard to instill any sort of compassion or empathy later on. Once that child has already solidified thoughts and ideas and concepts about the self, about others. Once that happens, it's very difficult. So these conversations have to take place even before 12. We mentioned 12-year-old. I mean,
and
this
never mind conversation,
we've got to talk about this.
Really being what you're trying to teach younger generation. So being that person, being that compassionate, empathetic person.
Right.
So that it's not just about explaining and educating through words, but I've always been a big advocate of actions speak louder than words, no matter what.
Right.
So you can say something all you want, and you can say something all you want, but unless you're acting on it, then
right.
Words mean nothing.
That's absolutely true. I mean, that's without a doubt. Now, there are two sides to the equation, and this is the thing too. Now, when we think about consent, or we think about sexual assault, we do think about men assaulting women, boys assaulting girls, right? I mean, that's generally what people think.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, because that's statistically how it happens. But it does happen on the flip side as well. You know what I mean? And the other day I talked about my story. I released a video, and it was, it was, I didn't think I was doing anything tremendous. I just thought I was letting people know that I was upset about what I was seeing with respect to Donald Trump and his rhetoric, and talking about women coming out about their sexual assault because they want to be famous, which is absolute bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, you hear something like that, and it's like, what? Come on, man.
Well, the victims coming out and then again being victimized by being called liars.
Right. Now,
because they want to achieve fame.
The response I received from coming out about that was overwhelmingly positive. And a lot of people were saying, that it's a huge taboo. That for a man to come out and say, hey, I was sexually assaulted, right? Now, if that's a taboo, imagine a man coming out and saying that there was a woman who was not listening to me and I didn't give her consent. See, we laugh, right?
But it's, I mean, I laugh
you
because
get my point. You get my point, because it works on both.
Because it's not funny. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it does happen and people fail to realize or don't know, or it's not talked about because it could be conceived as embarrassing.
Well, we have a culture where boys are raised like boys, girls are raised like girls, right? Boys will be boys, and that's, and girls will be girls. But here's the flip side to all of this, okay? And I'll tell the story. I'll leave the names out, obviously, out of respect. You know, when I was a DJ back, I don't know, it was probably about 15 years ago, something like that. I would play out, and you know, I was a big shot, you know, back then. at least in my own, at least in my own mind, you know. And there was one night in particular where a couple of young ladies asked me if I wanted to hang out, and you know, being in my 20s, of course, you know, yeah, let's hang out, you know, let's continue the party. So we finished up, and then we went back to the house. But you know, believe it or not, I did not have any intentions of going to certain places. I really didn't. Like, I wanted to go out and hang out, but I was not in the mindset to even think about going to that place, you know. And I'll just leave it at that. We get to the house, and one of the girls leaves, and you could see, I saw it was kind of a setup. You know, it's kind of like the girl was like laying up the shot, and the other girl was, you know, right there waiting for the rebound, I suppose. And so the one girl leaves, the other stays, and proceeds to become very aggressive. Right, very aggressive. Not physically, like she wanted to make out. You know, she wanted to get into a physical rendezvous relationship, and I wasn't there. I really wasn't. I wasn't there. I you know, I wasn't feeling it, and I made my intentions clear. And she just blew past that stop sign, like it was nothing, literally pushing me to the ground. Calling me all kinds of names, you know, telling me basically that I was a pussy for not wanting to. Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm just gonna be straight about it. She was calling me all these names, you know, berating me. Now, at the time, I found that funny. Right? I found it. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is funny.
It's never happened.
It's never happened to me before. You know, never happened since. But I'm just saying, it was funny, and I think that she felt she could do it because she's female. And she also may have found it humorous. And
she found a sense of entitlement. Like, how could he not want to? He's a guy.
Exactly.
Any female making sexual advances on a male, of course they're going to say yes.
And that's my point. So, because of that, right, you know, I went back the next day, and nothing happened, obviously. I was able to get out of that situation. But if the roles were reversed, and that was a man or a young man doing that to a young woman, that would be abhorrent. That would be rape. That would be assault, leading to rape. Let me clarify. So we've got to take it serious, right? We can't fix one side of the equation and not the other, because not fixing one negates both.
And it's a recognition that it does happen on both sides.
We've got to look at that. We have to recognize that fact. Okay, so we have to balance the equation, and we have to look at it from both sides. Okay, now that same entitlement that you mentioned with respect to the female and how she was acting towards me, don't men have that same feeling of entitlement instilled in them at a very early age? I mean, think about what they see on television. Think about how women are treated and how they are classed with respect to our culture, right? You take a girl out, you're gonna get laid. Date movies, you know, all these different like rom-coms. Like, it's always about the same thing. It's always about the woman going for the man, you know, because he has money or because he has something else to offer, security, whatever it is. As if the women need that because they don't have their own strength. They don't have their own, you know, their own lives in order.
And then maybe feeling like they have to repay in a sexual
exactly
way.
I mean, that's prevalent in our culture. Absolutely. Talk to any man and ask them about a first date. You know, if you go on a first date, do you expect anything at the end? You know, I'd be willing to bet most men would say, well, yeah, I'd hope so. And they would say, I'd give it a few chances. After the second or third date, if I don't get laid, you know,
then I'm out of here.
Right.
I'm not getting anything out of this.
Right. So there it is. They expect it. It's almost like, yeah, I took you out, so you got to give me some. You know, that's 100% where we are today, without a doubt. So when these boys, you know, college or you know, younger, a little older, when they act that way, there's a deep-rooted culture that has created that as evidenced by the video I just showed. That's an old paradigm. Now, in order for us to get to the next level, we've got to stop picking leaves off the tree. We have to stop trying to... You could kill a tree by picking the leaves, more than likely. But why bother wasting time when you can get right to the root of the problem? And the root of the problem is that we do not communicate effectively enough with ourselves and with our children. It's got to... We have to have those talks. Bottom line. That's the only way to change this.
Is having uncomfortable conversations.
The most uncomfortable conversation. If you're not willing to have the uncomfortable conversation, you're going to deal with the uncomfortable consequence, which I assure you is going to be hundreds of times worse. You know what I mean? We have to empower the young generation. There's a mindset now that you know, with adult males, very difficult to change. You know, that's not going to happen overnight. It's not. You know, and then you got this alpha male bullshit, right? Alpha males. I hear that all the time. Like, you know, the alpha. You know, but the alpha male is a protector. The alpha anything, female. If you are the alpha of your pack, you are the protector. You are someone who is there to guard and protect the weaker. Or the lesser, or someone who can't protect or fight for themselves.
Right. It's
that
the
is
alpha
what you
male
do.
is not the perpetrator.
No, exactly. You know, people have it in their mind that the alpha male is someone who could do and say and take whatever he or she likes. That's a Neanderthal. That's not an alpha male. That's a scavenger, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. It's uncivilized. It's animalistic.
So if you truly want to be an alpha, step up. And be
a leader.
Be a leader. Like, step up. I mean, you know, it blows me away when I hear these. I see posts about it. You know, about being alpha this, alpha that. And it drives me nuts. But anyway, if you guys have any comments about anything, you know, please let me know. If you have anything you'd like to say, now's the time. Just type it into the comment section, and I'll gladly address what I can. So, do we have anything right now?
We don't have anything right now.
No? Okay. All right, guys, listen. This is a subject that isn't going to be solved overnight. You know, end of story. It's not something that we can just wave a magic wand and wish away. It's not going to work that way. But what we can do is take the initial steps toward greater change. And it begins with having the tough discussions with our youth. We have to talk to our kids about consent, okay? Bottom line, and this is for me, my heart, straight to you. Don't judge yourself based on what you see or hear from other people. You are a sovereign human being. You can do whatever you want as long as what you're doing is in accordance with your being and in consent with the other. If you're dealing with someone else, end of story. You know, if you're with somebody and you two decide to do something together, whether it's sexually, emotionally, whatever it may be, that's your right. Don't ever let anybody take that away from you, and don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. Okay? And we have to get off of this guilt culture, and that's what it is too. It's not just rape culture; it's guilt culture.
Feeling bad.
Feeling bad about feeling. Feeling bad about liking sex, or feeling bad about liking the same sex, or whatever it is.
Or feeling bad about not wanting to participate in something, so you do it anyway.
Absolutely. You know, whenever we see assault, it has to do with the fact that there was something that went unexpressed. There was something in that person's life that was not expressed. It was repressed. And when you have repression, whatever it is you're trying to repress is going to express itself in a way that is damaging. It's straight out. So in order for us to get past that repression, we've got to inject a level of compassion into our mindset. We've got to inject a level of thoughtfulness and kindness. Okay? and we've got to get engaged with our youth. Bottom line, all right. And we also have to learn to forgive people like Rush Limbaugh. And I know that that's probably harder than anything else. But you're talking about a person who is fossilized, calcified in his position. He's not growing or going anywhere at this point. He's just fading into obscurity, and we have to just allow him to, peter out, because he will. That mindset is on its way out. So, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we?
Well, I was thinking this, and then there's a comment by Serena who states that I think the conversation can be made a little easier if we start with discussing personal space with younger children. This leads to those harder discussions as it relates to sexuality. If I can't touch my classmate, if they don't want to be touched, it follows that I can't force myself on them when we're teens, and I totally agree with that.
Right.
And I've seen memes and articles about even when a grandparent or a family member wants to kiss or hug their family member.
Right.
But really, we have to respect it. If the child says no or is pushing away, you don't force it.
Right.
Because it's a family member.
Right. That's
because
a very
that
good point.
Perpetuates. So we've seen those videos a few months ago where the little boy kept wanting to kiss the little girl. I mean, toddlers.
Right.
And it was funny and it's cute, but really that's when it starts.
That's a good point. When I saw the same video, I know which video you're talking about. When the kid wouldn't quit, and everyone finds that funny, and on the surface it's cute. It's
funny.
There's no malice, because we know there's no malice there. We know.
But when you don't stop that, or when you say, "Hey, listen, she doesn't want to be kissed," you have to respect
her space.
Respect her. Respect yourself.
Respect the space and respect yourself. Good point. And that's what it is. If you don't respect yourself, how could you possibly respect anyone or anything around you? It starts with the self. It starts with the relationship you have with you. Okay, and if you don't respect yourself, if you don't have that sort of relationship with you, then no, it's impossible that you can have that sort of relationship with anyone else. So, is there something else that we have there? Or?
Well, Christopher writes, just remember, do what thou wilt. This is from the Satanic. We all have free will. Use it wisely. Let your conscience be your guide. Live with good morals and values. We must make sure we stick to the narrow path.
Right. Chris is. I know Chris from high school. And hey, buddy, what's going on? Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. I really do appreciate your time and your attention. Absolutely, man. The narrow path is the hardest one to walk, but yet it's the one that doesn't lead in a circle. Right. It's the path that takes us to the next level. And I've always felt that you're on an unwholesome path when you are faced with having to make the same choice. It's like a fork in the road. You come to a fork, you make a choice, and you're back at that choice, which just means you went in a giant circle, which means you made a choice that was probably unwholesome or not productive. I don't want to say right or wrong. I try to avoid the right or the wrong choice, because I don't think we make right or wrong choices necessarily, or mistakes. I don't feel we make mistakes. I think we make choices, and in hindsight, we realize that it was a mistake.
But you learn from choices.
You either learn from those mistakes or you repeat them. Absolutely. But no, I agree with you 100%, man. And I'm sure you'd agree with me that you do have to take the time to have those discussions with the kids. You have to talk to them, and you have to be real. And that's the hardest part, man. It is just really kind of putting yourself into a position where you're not comfortable, But like I said earlier, if you don't have the uncomfortable discussions now, you're going to deal with the uncomfortable repercussions later, which is by far a lot worse. So, anything else before we wrap things up? Because we did go over time a little bit, but that's cool. It's a good discussion.
No, I think that we touched upon what the important parts of consent.
Absolutely. All right, guys, if you have anything else to say, if you're watching this after the live recording, leave some comments. I will read them and do my best to respond. I appreciate you watching, for those of you who stuck through it. I do, and I'll see you again next week at the same time. The topic will be posted the same way. I'll put it up when it comes to me. That's really what that's how this works. There really is no grand plan. There's no teleprompter. It's just me and whoever I have on the show talking from the heart. There's never going to be anything prepackaged here. So again, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks a lot. Take care.